Welcome to the fourth installment of this mini-series. If you were watching last week, you'll have seen how I built the porches and added the steps. During this installment, I hope to get this batch of structures pretty much finished. So let's turn the camera around and get back to work. Well, before I can put the tar paper on the roofs, I have to get the chimneys installed. I bought several packets of Tichy chimneys. They're all single flue square chimneys and I want some bigger ones. So what I've done with these is to file all the details of one side of two chimneys and then glue them together with the solvent. They're not really tall enough for all the locations. I need some extension pieces. Now in N scale, Tichy make a brick column which is the perfect extension piece for a chimney. Unfortunately, no such part exists in HO. So what I've done is I've taken a couple of corner pilasters from a pack of Walters modulars, run them on a sheet of sandpaper until the corner is now a knife edge. Do that with both of them, and then I'm going to glue them like that, and that will give me a chimney extension. It's actually half a brick wider than the Tichy chimneys, but I think that's okay. After all, it matches the cap, and there's any number of reasons why the builder would have gone with a broader column and then narrowed it down by half a brick when near the top. So I'm just going to accept that. Of course, the step has the advantage of not having to hide the seam because it's now an architectural feature rather than a fudge. So let me get these glued together, get my chimney extensions, and I'll be right back. Now, whenever a chimney sits on the ridge of the roof, I find it easier to just cut a hole and push it through. When it's on the side of the roof, I cut the chimney off the appropriate angle and just glue it on. Now on the bunkhouse, the Tichy chimneys were not long enough, so I've cast resin extension pieces. That's the black bits. Those will be glued approximately like that. This one is within the boundaries of the building and the siding just goes over the top of it. This one was built outside just to give some variety. Anyway, as with most of my wood to styrene joints, I'm going to use plier bond. Now it doesn't matter if the glue runs slightly up the side of the chimney. Firstly, there's going to be tar paper on the roof, and secondly, anything that shows through will just represent the sealant, because often chimneys are bedded in a great thick bead of tar, so I don't have to be too worried about seeing the glue, as long as it's confined to the base of the chimney and doesn't run up the side. I haven't done any of the porch roofs yet, mainly because I've got to get some paint in certain areas of the buildings while I still have good access. And then I'm going to install the lower windows and doors before attaching the porch roofs. I'm using this apple barrel white acrylic paint. I've diluted it because I don't want it to completely cover everything. I want a little bit of the wood to show through. I want the paint to look fairly tired. I was going to paint yesterday before I attached the porch steps, but then I thought, no, I need to do that first because there's rather minimal gluing surface on the stairs. So I wanted plain wood against plain wood. I didn't want to have to worry about whether the glue was going to stick well enough on painted surfaces. Now I don't have to be particularly accurate with the white. I can go over other areas if I need to. It won't hurt. I've painted all the walls, well, all the lower walls anyway. I haven't done the tar paper upper story. I did have a brief moment of panic when a few of the walls started to warp with the moisture, but they straightened up What I'm going to do next is install all the doors and the lower floor windows, then get the porch roofs on, and then finish the painting before I get the upper floor windows in and the tar paper on the roof. Well, I've installed all the lower floor windows and doors so that I can get the porch roofs on, but while I'm waiting for the glue to dry, I'm putting the tar paper on the roofs, because I can do that without jolting the building and risking having the windows fall out. The procedure is pretty much the same as I did for the walls, but checking the photographs, this tar paper goes up and down the roof, which I thought was a bit unusual. Before I install it, what I do is put a few lines on the roof with the square. It doesn't really matter where they are, as long as they are perpendicular to the plane of the roof. That way I can see if I'm going skew and make some adjustments as necessary. Now, because they run up and down the roof, I'm starting at the same end of each building. They would want to set it so that the prevailing wind blows over the seams instead of trying to get under them. As with the walls, I've cut my masking tape to a scale 4 foot wide, and I'm overlapping them slightly. Now, although most of them I'm putting all the way across, I am cutting some, because on the real buildings the rolls wouldn't all be the right length. They would use up some of the pieces. And then if you want to simulate a repair, we can just add an extra piece of tar paper. Where shall I put it? Let's put a repaired area right here. And then before I cut off the eaves, I'm going to change the blade, because I'm going to need a brand new one. This one is starting to pull up the tape. Well, I guess now I am out of excuses for delaying the attachment of the porch roofs. The next step on the porch is to apply the tar paper and flashing. Tar paper is exactly the same as I have done on the upper walls and the roof, starting at the bottom with strips of masking tape cut to a scale 4 feet wide. Some of these porch roofs are about 9 scale feet deep, so I put 2 full pieces on and then a half width strip. Where the porch roof meets the wall, we need some kind of flashing. What I'm using for that is thin strips cut from address labels, because that will have a slightly glossy and much smoother finish. And these have to be forced right in against the edge. It would actually be an L-shaped piece of flashing that would be on top of the roof and under the siding material. Well, I've had another painting session since I was last recording. I've got the chimneys done, I've finished all the white on the porches. Most noticeably, the tar paper has its base coat on. And now for the highlights, I'm going to dry brush it with a lighter grey. I'm going to hit the edges and then streak it down the roof. Well, over the last couple of hours I have finished off the tar paper roofs, I've touched up all the white trim, I've painted the flashing silver, I've touched up the chimneys and put a dark wash on them. And now it is time to finish installing all the windows. Before putting the glue on them, I always test fit them, just to make sure that they fit easily in the openings, and then if necessary open it out with a square file. I'm using Testors Clear Parts adhesive, although there are numerous suitable glues on the market. Just use whatever you feel comfortable with. Well, I've got all the windows installed on these 5 buildings. I'm not going to weather them until I actually get them on the layout. So for the purposes of this task, all I need to do now is paint the foundations. So I need to put the buildings aside in a safe place and reorganize my workbench. Yesterday I worked on the shop and storage building. It's now at the same state as all the others. I've got the tar paper on the roof, got it painted, got the walls painted, got the doors and windows in. So it's caught up. All that really remains to be done now on these 6 structures is to paint the foundations. This is a 5-step process, although the steps go pretty quickly. I started by using a spray primer, and then once that dried I put a wash of a dark grey, almost black, over everything, and that will now be the colour for the mortar joints. And now I'm dry brushing. Well, it's actually more than a dry brush. It's a really heavy dry brush that covers virtually all the raised areas but doesn't really get into the mortar joints. So that will be step 3. And then I'm going to use a light brown for dry brushing, because there's a lot of brown and gold in the rocks in the vicinity, and of course these foundations would have been built with that same stone, so I need to match the colour fairly closely. And then once that's done, I will come back and do a very light dry brush with a very pale grey or even white. Well, I've finished the gold dry brush. Now it's time to do the final coat, and this is the lightest dry brush of the lot. I need a fair bit of white. I'm going to add just a little bit of the previous grey into it. Well, here are the first 6 buildings ready to install on Brian's layout. Well, I say the first 6 buildings. There are many that he's built already installed. The first 6 of my batch. 4 houses, a bunkhouse, and a shop and maintenance building. Well, even though that completes the first 6 structures, I still have 3 more to do. So next week we'll get on with those. Hope to see you then. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.